I don't know if I have this theologically correct, so Father can help me with that if I'm off, but this is just my own working understanding of the way this all works. Prayer, study, and action. It seems as though the prayer and the study is really our practice or our preparation for our action. And we're not at our ultimate fulfillment, our ultimate culmination in all this activity as a Christian, as a lay Christian, lay Catholic, until we're actually acting and doing. And understand, our ultimate end is with God. So when we're in the Mass, we are there with God physically. And that's going to be our ultimate end. It's a foretaste of heaven. But then what happens at the end? Ite missa est. The Mass is ended. Let us go in peace. We are sent out. Pope Benedict says that in his document Sacramentum Caritatis, in antiquity, missa simply meant dismissal. In Christian usage, however, it gradually took on a deeper meaning. The word dismissal has come to imply a mission. Missionaries. Remember the song? Mission. These few words succinctly express the missionary nature of the church. In his text, Spirit of the Liturgy, Pope Benedict, then Cardinal Ratzinger, makes the point that the liturgy itself should be the center of our lives, as such should form our lives. In other words, we never simply leave the liturgy as if it were but one more thing to check off the list of things to do for the week, but rather we ought to take the mysteries contained in the Mass out into the world. Our action. So it's like going to practice and then game day. The game is on, and we need to be prepared to act. What does our Lord say? You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its savor, wherewith shall it be salted? It is good for nothing anymore but to cast out and to be trodden on by men. You are the light of the world. A city seated on a mountain cannot be hidden. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but upon a candlestick, that it may shine to all that are in the house. So let your light shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. So our action is the culmination of our prayer and our study, of our piety and our study. We are made to do good works for the glory of God. So this starts off, we have to have a spirit of charity, of caring for others. So that means the focus has to be off of ourselves and on to others. We got to see the pitch coming in order to swing. And it's very similar to selling. We have to be able to sell the product whenever the customer is there. So we have to meet a need. Do we know of anybody who's suffering? Do we know of anybody who has some kind of spiritual need? Missionaries, we're called. If we think about it, our country was founded by mostly Protestant people. But how is it that the church came over? When those missionaries, those actual missionaries, came over, sure, they knew the faith, but they didn't start off by preaching on the streets. They started off by meeting the human needs of those people that were there, those who were in need, the poor, the uneducated, the sick. Brought missionaries over, the hungry, with food, with medical care, and tended to these people, and then they were ready to learn the faith. And they were receptive to the faith. Grace builds on nature. It makes fertile ground for it to sink deep into. Another thing I want to just touch on for a little while here is, and including in this act of charity, the whole idea of listening and the importance of listening when we're going to help people. Listening is actually an art, so it can be learned. It can be developed. Hate to mention his name, but this comes up a lot with the motivators as a very good example, although he was morally inept, as is widely known. Bill Clinton is often given as an example of one of the better listeners. It's said that people may have been in a room full of people, or maybe even in a convention, and someone's given an opportunity to ask a question, and they felt as if they were the only one in the room when he would listen to them. And in my own personal experience, because of the line of work that I'm in, that's something that we are trained to do. We have to pass a pretty rigorous exam that took, 3 or 4 days or something like that, something crazy like that. But in it, what they would do is present a lot of facts, and we have to be able to weed through them and use the pertinent ones to solve the problem. Similar thing here. We have to be that close and attentive of listeners. And, when you're talking to people, especially that have some kind of problems or some issues going on, they are going to have a lot to say. And some of it is not going to be necessary. And sure, we need to be empathetic and listen and let them vent. And that's part of being a good friend or a good Christian. But being able to filter through that information, because it's going to be TMI, too much information. And we have to filter through those things to be able to really understand what it is their needs are and what we can help them out with. They'll have anxiety or worries. And then once we have all that information, once we've listened closely, then we can guide and answer that person's questions, guide them to someone who may help them if we can't, or to the right information if we don't have it. But we have to know what their needs are before we do that. So we ought to be very selfless. If we are interested in telling this person what we know and showing what we know, then we could completely miss them. We could completely lose them, or they could lose us. Brings to mind that phrase we hear John Maxwell say quite often: people don't want to know how much we know until they know how much we care. The idea, the end goal is being effective, being an effective apostle. Because we may know all the facts, but then still, because of presentation, still lose the person. Next thing I want to think a little bit about is patience. We talked about patience and, these athletes, the ones that have to go through a long period of waiting before they get to where their goals are. Patience in working with others. How often do we get there and we want, we want to invite somebody to the Cursillo and they got to make the one right now. But we may have to walk with somebody and offer them for years before they actually make the weekend. Or they may need to make some changes with very personal things in their life. And we want them to make those changes overnight. When it's something sinful, then, mortally sinful, that change is pretty urgent. That's something that does have to immediately be changed. That's not what I'm talking about. But more so those changes that are going to be difficult, Whole lifestyle changes. Sometimes we'll encounter people. A lot of times, whenever we're counseling couples that are approaching marriage, and they're headed the way that the world has guided them, and it's a complete wrong direction, the road to disaster. But that's the way the world will take us. And to tell them all the things they got to change, they're overwhelmed. Do we have the patience to take the time, at least to offer, to walk with these people along the way, to get them through, to approach gradual change, to get the good results that they need, that they're after? Do we have the patience to walk along with people and pick them up when they fall? Give them that nudge they need whenever they need it, the shot in the arm, when they're doubtful or hesitant. We have to remember we're not all in the same place on the journey. Are we willing to walk with somebody along the way? We're not all coming from the same place. Don't all have the same background, but we're all trying to get to the same destination, heading in the same direction. Take some patience. And unfortunately, we will lose some. Some will just say, I'm not willing to walk any farther. I'm going to have to go another route. And as Christ did, we let them go. But for those that are willing to keep on going, we stand there right alongside of them and walk with them. Finally, I want to just talk a little bit about humility. Humility is absolutely essential if we're going to be an effective apostle. If we guided by the world, none of what I'm talking about or none of doing any of this is going to make any sense at all whatsoever. Because as opposed to the athletes I was talking about, they are there for some very substantial earthly gain. Millions and billions and on for the sacrifices they make. Our benefits are not of this world, but we're going to have significant sacrifices to make if we want to be good apostles. The Cursillo, or just plain being a real Catholic, is not for ourselves, except that we make it to heaven. But as far as the things we do to get there, they are not going to be for our own gain. We might say, well, it's helped my family substantially being in the Cursillo, but that's not really required. The piety and the study, I know personally, before I made the Cursillo, the piety and the study I was already doing without the Cursillo, because it's just basically a good Catholic, doing what a good Catholic would. But the action is a step up, and it's going out there and being concerned for others and trying to bring others in. Got a really good example from this week. A couple of weeks ago, we released a video, and normally we might get 100 views a day, 200 on a good day, and on the site completely. And I was traveling this past weekend, so I wasn't able to check the stats like I do every night, but I figured I'll just jot them down and record them when I get back. So I checked them on my phone. When I got up, and I do that last thing at night, when I got up the next morning, 500 views just overnight. And I said, something's up. Sure enough, a video went viral, and when it does that for us, that's not a good thing. Well, it's a good thing, but it's not pretty. So it's somebody who is really, really at odds with what we have to say. And so the insults and the condemnation just comes flying. And that's okay. Because what I just read before was from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 5. Right before that, the light of the world, salt of the earth, was the Sermon on the Mount, when Christ gave us the Beatitudes. And then here's the one that comes at the end. Blessed are ye when they shall revile you and persecute you and speak of all ill against you, untruly for my sake. Be glad and rejoice, for your reward is great in heaven. The reward won't necessarily be here. For so they persecuted the prophets that were before you. So it's okay. It's actually to be expected. And as one of my spiritual directors told me, if it's not happening, then you're not saying nothing. Not that we're trying to irritate anybody, but we are at odds with the world. And it's history repeating itself over and over and over again. So let's go. It's all about swinging. It's about action. We got to do it. First, buddy up. Christ sent us out 2 by 2. It's almost required. Well, that's a very good example to tell us it's just about required to have somebody along with you. Spiritual groups are a huge help. That's why the Cursillo gives them to us. But being with somebody gives that synergy, that 2 people can do more together than they could do separately, even with the same abilities. Buddying up with somebody to do something. And have confidence in what you know and the resources that you have. Remember I talked last time about the competence-confidence loop and how they feed on each other. Any doubt that you have is going to be coming from the dark side. Have confidence in what you know and be able to go out and be willing to share it. So let's get on with some action. God bless you.
God bless you.